Hi, Scorpio. Welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for June of 2021. Well, this month there are going to be some dramatic events, mostly coming down in your 8th house of intimacy, which is like your favorite area, right? Kind of, maybe when it has to do with sex, but maybe not so much when it has to do with trust. And we're going to be talking about an eclipse happening there and also Mercury retrograde. So yeah, there may be some uncomfortable conversations ahead. Hey, Julia, let's kick this off with you talking about Mercury there in that 8th house. Let's just get right into it.
Sounds like a plan. Well, hey there, Scorpio. Mercury represents how we communicate, also where a lot of our thinking takes place during the month. And it starts the month retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which all correlates with your 8th house. The 8th house is a very intimate house, like what Jamie was saying, physical intimacy, psychological intimacy, and financial intimacy. So 8th house rules other people's money, meaning the money you share with the people closest to you, like a partner, through maybe a joint credit card, or even institutions like loans and mortgages through a bank. So with Mercury retrograde in this house, it means you might have to, first of all, have to redo or rethink some of your strategies around shared money in your life, whether that's from the personal or the institutional level. And this 8th house can also represent research. You know, it's about getting to the bottom of things, about mysteries. So there might be something that you've been researching, which you might have to backtrack on, realize that you might have to redo your conclusions and start over again. Now on June 22nd, Mercury is going to be moving direct. So these issues are going to slowly start getting a lot better. Now, Mars, the planet of action and activity, starts the month in your 9th house. This is the house of education. It's the house of travel. It's the house of adventure. So you're really rearing to go on some adventure now. If there are a lot of things holding you back, like responsibilities or a job, it could get you kind of stir crazy. If you are going for a trip during this time, you might run into some frustrations along the way. And if you're learning something new or in school, you might also run into conflict with the people you go to school with, or even teachers. Now, on June 11th, Mars is going to be moving into your 10th house of career and authority figures. So that's going to be a different shift in energy. With Mars in the 10th house, you're going to be really starting to apply yourself a lot at your job, trying to kind of get ahead. But Mars is the planet of numero uno. So you're not going to really take too kindly if you have a boss or somebody else, any other official in your life, even a parent, if those are your authority figures, who are trying to put a sort of stop to you or tell you how you're supposed to do things. So, you know, the best way to use this transit is to really just kind of focus on getting ahead on your work, and just kind of, you know, take a deep breath and count to 10 if you're about to run into some conflict with the authority figures in your life. Then Venus, the planet of art, beauty, and relationship, spends the first day this month still in your 8th house. She was mainly in here last month too, bringing her a little bit of luck, a little bit of pleasure to all 8th house matters, including physical intimacy. Venus in the 8th house can, because the 8th house represents psychology, can also mean that you're having a really sort of fruitful psychiatric session or other healing art too in your life. But by June 2nd, Venus is going to shift into the 9th house. And if you're single during this time, you might find that you have a crush on somebody who comes from a really different background than you. The 9th house can rule foreigners as well as people who come from different religions. And when Venus moves into the 9th house, you might take a lot of pleasure in sort of expanding your mind and learning new things as well.
Yes, and to continue on those relationship themes, we have Juno retrograde this month, and it's going to go on for a couple of more months to come. It's in your 2nd house, which is a house of money and possessions, the things that belong to you and only to you. And Juno, being the asteroid goddess of marriage and committed partnerships of all kinds, this is likely to be connected with a partnership that you're in. You might have a spouse that's holding out for some financial separation. You might feel like you need some financial separation. And really what Juno's trying to do, being in Sagittarius, is to create a more spacious feeling in your relationship. So there may be some renegotiation that has to go on while Juno is retrograde. And you can, you know, take some time in the next couple of months to do that. However, the situation with Mercury is a little bit more immediate because Mercury is only retrograde for a couple of weeks at a time. Now, the good news is that any miscommunications or trouble stirred up by Mercury in your 8th house of intimacy is going to be short-lived. Now, this being the 8th house of intimacy and Mercury being the planet of communication, it's going to be really important that you communicate in ways that are trustworthy and that show some quality of trust. So basically, when Mercury goes retrograde, you have to engage in a retrospection of your communications and just do your best to clean things up as well as you can. Now, there is an eclipse coming, and this is likely when things are really going to come to a head. And that is happening on June 10th. And the sun and the moon are getting together in Gemini with that Mercury retrograde right there in your 8th house. Now, solar eclipses, which is what this is, solar eclipses are times when we have to look at our shadow. Something happens that is an actual event in the world, usually shown by behavior, possibly on the part of you or on the part of your partner, that necessitates, where you really have to look at your shadow, the stuff that you don't like to look at on an everyday basis. And it's probably going to be wrapped up with communication as well. How you communicate, how you speak, how you speak the truth, how you listen, and bringing as much warmth and I would say an attitude that the other person is probably doing their best. That could really help to smooth things over under this probably pretty difficult eclipse, sorry to say. Now, later in the month, we have a full moon as the moon cruises around the wheel and moves into Capricorn, right here in your 3rd house, repeating the themes of communication, because the 3rd house, which is ruled by Mercury, is a house of communication. The moon brings strong emotion to this domain during the full moon, because full moons, they tend to kick up a lot of emotions. Probably not as dramatic as the eclipse was, so thank goodness for that. But the moon in Capricorn has a tendency to be kind of emotionally self-protective, maybe a little emotionally suppressed, kind of brittle. It's hard to support the moon in Capricorn. So if you find yourself communicating with others any sense of bitterness at how ill-supported you are around here, then you might want to open yourself up to the nurture that may always have been there for you, but which maybe you haven't been receiving. And I think that's really what this moon is good for. Well, that's what we have for you, Scorpio. Hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful if you didn't enjoy it. Not like it was all good news, right? But some months are just that way. You can find your horoscope on our website, pandoraastrology.com. You can also find our services page there where you could get a reading. And there are classes as well. And our forecast is there too. And until next time, we'll see you around the cosmos. Bye-bye.
Bye.